Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and with the weather a little bit milder, I thought I'd come outside and give you an outdoor segment today. So what I'm going to do today is, in my ongoing coverage of the new Sony a7R3, I just wanted to give you some feedback on what I'm liking, what I'm not liking so much so far in terms of the camera itself. And so these are my picks and my pans on the Sony a7R3 at this point. Now, just for clarification before I proceed, I do want to let you know I think that maybe some of my recent statements have been misinterpreted to where some of you thought that I am wholesale switching over to Sony and not going to be covering Canon or shooting with Canon any longer. That's not actually the case. I did mention I'm selling one of my Canon 6D and a 70D body, but I have a lot of Canon bodies, and so I'm going to be continuing to shoot with a 5D Mark IV and with a Canon 80D. But I'm also going to be augmenting that with a Sony a7R3 and a Sony a6500. And so my plan is to shoot both of these systems kind of side by side, and it just gives me more flexibility for doing a variety of reviews on both systems. And I really feel like Sony does have some momentum right now. And on a personal level, there are things about the Sony ecosystem that attract me right now. So, but just so you know, I'm going to be continuing to do Canon reviews, and it gives me more flexibility to be able to shoot both of these systems. And of course, there's a lot of development for both of them, and I want to be able to cover those as effectively as I can. So, moving on. Sony a7R3 in real world use, and I've been shooting it in a variety of different situations. I've been shooting it out in extremely cold conditions around here. It's been a lot of -30, and with the wind chill, -40, really crazy stuff. I've shot some event work. I've shot a few kind of not formal portraits, but some quick portraits. This time of year around here, there's not many people that are looking for formal portraits, and so it's more just within my own family group. But anyway, I've done some testing with that. And just so you know, I'm jumping into testing as far as image quality, and I'll be doing some direct comparisons with the 5D Mark IV. I'll look at things like skin tones and dynamic range and high ISO performance, resolution, all of that stuff. Don't worry, that's coming. But right now I want to talk to you more about the features here and the handling and what's working for me, what's not working so far. Now, a number of you have raised questions regarding weather sealing due to another YouTube video here. And so I just want you to know that I'm not going to be kind of torture testing to see if I can make the camera fail. That's not really what I do. And the people that provide me gear probably wouldn't be too happy if I did do that. But what I can tell you is that I have shot the a7R3 out in extreme conditions in terms of cold and, moisture in terms of frozen precipitation, and I've not had any issues with it, no problems at all. I've brought it in just so cold to the touch that without gloves, it bothers you to touch it, and it's continued to function just fine. And by the way, the battery life, that's been one thing I've been watching in that, has actually continued to be quite good. And so as far as the weather sealing, would I say that I would be surprised that something like the Nikon D850 or the Canon 5D Mark IV would have better weather sealing? The answer is no. I mean, Canon and Nikon have been doing this for a long time, and I do think that one of the downsides of going towards a really compact body by comparison is frankly, you don't have as much room in the actual architecture of the camera to fit weather sealing in. And so I think that for most people in most situations, the weather sealing is probably going to be fine. That test struck me as being somewhat of a more extreme test, but certainly if you shoot in extremely humid conditions or a lot of heavy moisture, it might want to give you pause if you're considering what system to invest in. But I think as far as what my personal use is, I probably won't have a problem with this. Now, in terms of something I do consider to be a liability is that this camera, although it has an amazing burst rate and great buffer on it, it definitely has a lot more downtime when it comes to writing still. And Sony has tried to improve that in that they will allow you to access certain functions. But the reality is if you have shot a burst of photos, particularly if you're writing to both cards, you're going to have a time where you're looking at the screen and it is, saying writing and counting down through it, and you'll have a little while where you're not really able to do a whole lot. So that is still an area where I find that Nikon D850 or a Canon 5D Mark IV have an advantage. You lose much less downtime to writing. In my first episode, I did mention the touchscreen, and You know, I'm going to mention that a few times during the process of the review, and just because I want to send a message to Sony that, frankly, I think that they're capable of doing a lot better with that and delivering a touchscreen that has full implementation, allows you to access menus and various aspects of functionality. If you hit the FN button, I want to be able to touch the screen and select functionality there, not have to use some other device to scroll there. And so that's just something that I want to hit for them. One thing that is a bit of a real issue here, which frankly I'm filming on the A6500 and it hasn't been an issue there, but maybe because the opening is larger here because of a full frame body, sensor dust is definitely an issue with the a7R Mark III. Now, because it's easy to access, you know, with a little blower, it's not too hard to clean it back off, but I certainly do find in changing lenses that even though this is not exactly a really dusty time of year, I'm definitely getting some dust in there that shows up when I'm shooting at small apertures like f11, and already on a couple occasions I've seen on a few shots, even though I've only been shooting with it for a week, that there were some dust spots there that I had to work to eliminate. So, you know, that's definitely a downside if you want to consider that. Now, as far as my own experience, I haven't had to use Sony service, but I do know, just something for you to consider, is that a lot of people have less than happy things to say about Sony service. And my perspective is that Sony is such a forward-thinking company. They're bringing out more new cameras on a more regular basis, it seems like, than what anybody else is. And it seems to me that Sony is so invested in their next best thing, their next best technology, that maybe sometimes they forget to actually service the cameras that they've already built and to service the customers that they already had. And so I think that that's an area where Sony really needs to, if they want to really steal professional market share from 5D series or D800 series customers, they have to step up their game in regards to that, because people do care about service. And working professionals, they will have issues, either damage issues or in some cases failure issues, and they need to know that they can count on Sony customer service. So again, not a personal experience, not a personal problem as of yet, but there's enough anecdotal evidence from people that give me feedback to know that this is a real issue out there. So I think it's something that Sony needs to step up, along with all the improvements they've made to recent cameras like the A9 and the A7R Mark III. One other thing that I find as a Canon shooter, and I've been accustomed since the original 6D to having very nice GPS implementation built into the camera. Sony does not build in GPS into the cameras, but they rely on an app with your smartphone and the Sony Play Memories app there to basically use your smartphone to provide location information. Now, I don't know if, and that's done via Bluetooth, but I don't know if it's because of the cold and maybe the layers of clothing I have, but I'm not finding that to be all that reliable for me. I'll get a few shots that will be GPSed out of a series, say if I'm out snowshoeing or I'm out just kind of hiking through the woods or whatever that I'm doing. I'll have a few shots out of my, when I come back and I examine them, I'll have a few that have GPS embedded into them, tracking information, and then a large majority of them that won't have that. And so for me, it's not as reliable as what I would like. And I don't know if that, again, is a communication issue or if it's just, the interface is still kind of glitchy and that Sony needs to do some updating to their actual app. And so I don't know the cause, but I certainly can see the effect from that. Now, fortunately, although this has been a list of negatives here at this point, the reality is that to me the pluses far outweigh the negatives, and there's a lot of huge improvements to this camera that I'm personally really enjoying. And bottom line, I want you to know I really am enjoying using the camera a lot. And so I went into this saying, if I like it, I think I'm pretty interested in adding one. I've taken that to the next step where I've already let the distributor for Sony here in Canada know that at the beginning of February, basically when my review period is up with the a7R3 loaner copy I have, by the way, thanks B&H Photo for providing me a retail copy of the camera and then also the 24-105 lens for review purposes. But After that, I've let them know that I will be taking a copy for myself, and a few of you have offered to purchase my backup 6D body. Unfortunately, it's already sold, as did the 70D body, and those monies are going towards helping to purchase one of these for myself. But things that I've really liked is the improved autofocus. Autofocus is actually quite a joy to use on this camera now, and the IAF works really, really well now. It's very well implemented and very, very accurate. And really, frankly, yesterday, like I was shooting a little series to compare skin tones and doing some quick portraits using the Sigma 85mm f1.4 art lens. And so, I mean, of course, with the Sigma MC11 adapter and Sigma lenses, IAF works and works quite well. And boy, it was such a delight to be able to shoot a Sigma lens and nail focus exactly where I wanted it every time, which has not been my experience always in the past. And so I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the autofocus even in tracking and in burst shooting. So far, I'm pretty impressed with what this camera is capable of doing. And so it seems to lock on and do quite a great job of tracking, and doing that without me having to do a lot of tweaking and figuring out how to make it work. And you know, for me personally, even though I'm not super familiar with Sony bodies, I was able to get better results more quickly for me than I was, say, with the Nikon D850, another camera body that I have even less experience with, but I found that I was able to get better results more quickly with the a7R3, and really comparable results to the 5D Mark IV, a platform that I've got a lot of familiarity with. So pretty great there. Another thing that is awesome about this camera is the burst rate, and the fact that they have managed to deliver such an excellent burst rate, up to 10 frames per second. And you know, that's with some, you know, Sony tends to be ambitious in their press releases and in their spec list. And unlike Canon, who tends to slightly over-deliver on their spec list, Sony tends to slightly under-deliver. That being said, even if you're getting, say, 9 frames per second, or if you're shooting without any kind of blackout and you're getting 8 frames per second, that's still a very impressive performance, considering that you are moving over 42 megapixels of information there. And so for my purposes, that is plenty, and puts this into, really for me, a sports-like category. And you know, you consider the fact that only 5 years ago, you know, the 1DX was king for Canon shooters at 12 frames per second, and that was only pushing 16 megapixels of information through the pipeline. And so the fact that, you know, Sony under certain conditions can deliver close to 10 frames per second, moving 42 megapixels of information, that's pretty impressive. And so I like that aspect a lot. You know, another thing, particularly with the a7R3, that I am finding pretty cool is the ability, particularly, again, as a Canon shooter, the ability to use Aps-C lenses on here, and to have a dedicated Aps-C mode. And of course, unlike, you know, for example, there's a crop on the Canon 5DS or 5DSR, and that's cool. But of course, the fact that you have an optical viewfinder means that your framing stays the same, you know, for the most part. With the, you know, electronic viewfinder, of course, it basically functions when you go into that crop mode, which is still 18 megapixels. You know, a lot of you know, flexibility to shoot with there. You know, you're actually seeing that framing, you know, either on the screen or in the viewfinder itself. And of course, you have the option, if you wanted to, you know, to try to expand your crop and just, you know, you can actually take it out of that and shoot a lens full frame without any kind of mirror box type issues, obviously. But, you know, just being able to shoot in that Super 35 or Aps-C mode means that I can bring along a small, you know, Sony E-mount Aps-C lens like this 55-210. You know, it's small, it's light, but I can bring it along as a companion to a bigger kit. And, you know, and just in case I needed some reach, I can grab that and actually get really very good results out of it. And of course, most of the negatives of the optical performance of Aps-C lenses are minimized on a full frame, at least in terms of resolution. And, you know, as a result, I mean, I just find that I'm getting quite good results out of it. And so that's a bit of a refreshing thing from me, considering that Canon tends to be really restrictive with that on its own platform. Another thing that has been impressing me is the quality of the in-body image stabilization. And as I've been doing shooting some handheld tests, what I'm finding is that, you know, say if I throw my Zeiss Milvus 135 millimeter f2 on there, number one, it's awesome to have image stabilization for a lens like that. But what is great is that as I'm doing my test, I'm really getting as good of results as what I've been able to get from dedicated lens image stabilization in the past for a focal length like that. And, you know, I also threw the Canon 50 millimeter f1.8 on there, and I was able to get some decent results at like 0.4 of a second. And that, frankly, is as good as what I've seen. Yeah, and some will argue, well, you should be getting 1 second. I have to say that at this point, having reviewed many lenses, different image stabilization systems, I have never really had any success hand-holding shutter speeds of 1 second. Regardless of the shutter speed, regardless of the image stabilization system, I find that there is just too much movement during that dragging of a shutter, that there seems to be a practical limit there for me, at least personally. And so I can get down to about this threshold, 0.4 of a second, and you know, still get usable results in a lot of cases, but going beyond that, it's never worked for me. And so what I'm finding is that I'm getting as good of image stabilization as I've ever really gotten. And so I think that that's pretty fantastic, considering that is across the board with a variety of lenses. And I really like the fact that even if I'm using something old school, like throwing on some of my, you know, vintage glass on there via adapter, the fact that I can actually go in and I can actually customize the behavior of the steady shot to the focal length that I'm putting on there, even if it's impossible for the camera to actually recognize that. I find that it makes a big difference in the quality of the end result. And so that is pretty awesome. One final thing that I do want to praise is that the improved battery life on this camera is the real deal. And so far, I've been testing for about a week, and I've shot a lot of photos during that time. I've shot not long periods of 4K video, but I have shot clips here and there throughout the review period. And at the moment, I am still on, I have 24% left on my very first charge on this. And so I charged the battery when the camera arrived. I have been shooting with it ever since then. I have not charged it at all, and I'm kind of wait till it goes basically towards the end just to see how long I can push that. But considering, you know, the first thing that happened to me when I went to film this section with the segment with the A6500 is that I got the warning that battery was exhausted, and I'm pretty accustomed to seeing that. I've got 4 batteries for the A6500. And so to be able to shoot this long, it means that in real practical shooting, I'm doing as well or actually better than what I would be doing comparatively with my 5D Mark IV, which I find burns through batteries faster than its stated rating, which is, to me, is really unusual with Canon cameras. And so for whatever reason, my 5D Mark IV tends to be a little bit battery hungry. And I know that I've had enough feedback from other 5D Mark IV shooters to know that they're also surprised with the battery life they're getting. So in this case, I would say my kind of real world experience, at least at this point, is that my battery life I'm getting in the new a7R3 is basically matching that what I would get of the 5D Mark IV, which puts us in a whole new category in terms of reliability of not having to swap out batteries. And so, you know, all in all, as I've said, there's a lot of pluses happening here right now, and I am enjoying shooting with the camera quite a bit. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you look in the description down below, you can see my ongoing image gallery. I'm trying to shoot with a variety of glass here, both, the kit quote-unquote lens. I'm shooting with some Aps-C lenses and uploading there. I'm adapting a number of lenses to put there as well. And so you can see a lot of different shots, under different kinds of scenarios. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. If you look in the description also, you can find buying links if you would like to order the camera for yourself. And of course, you can follow me there on social media, become a patron. Thanks to all of you that have been doing that. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.